Hello everyone, welcome to the episode where we are finally getting started with another character type, and that is what quite a few people have been asking for a while, and that is Live2D characters. So yeah, this is going to be a fairly simple process. There's just a couple things that we have to do, including a little package that we have to download. Now, we are not going to be coding anything in this video. We're strictly going to be working with the UI and setting up everything so that way it can support our Live2D characters, because there is a very particular way that we need to do this in order for it to look right and the characters to show up correctly on screen. Now, the first thing we're going to need is we're going to need to download the Live2D Cubism software development kit. And just so everyone knows, this is not something that I have just come up with the method myself. Actually, if you look at the videos here, Rivertoon Games is the person who showed me how to do this. So when I was first looking how to implement Live2D characters, I checked out his video. He had a very nice tutorial on it. So let's go ahead and grab the SDK. That way we can import a package into Unity that will allow us to import our characters. So on the main page here, you've got Cubism SDK for Unity. That's exactly what we want, and we can just download it right here. So once we download it, well, first of all, we need to agree, and then we can go ahead and download the latest version, and it'll download ourselves a Unity package. From there, inside of Unity, what we can do is we can right-click and import a package, go to Custom Package, and then we can select from our downloads that SDK that we just downloaded. And let's go ahead and import everything from that package inside of our project. Everything is fine the way it is. It even comes with a couple default characters that we can work with. So if you don't have your own Live2D characters yet, that's fine. Just look under samples, and there are a couple models here that you can use, including these nice detailed characters with animations and expressions. So let's go ahead and import. After it's finished importing, inside of your assets folder, you'll now have a folder called Live2D, and inside of there, Cubism has all the things that we need to make this work. The only thing I'm going to look at right now is under samples and check out some of the models that it imported. So these are all the characters that we have available to import into our project. So if you look in one of those character folders, we already have a prefab, and it's already got all of these Cubism components already attached to the characters, including an animator, and literally what you can just do is drag and drop it into your scene. But as Rivertoon Games points out in his video, you may have to restart Unity whenever you import a new Live2D character. He did do that a while ago. I myself have not had to do that, so I don't have to restart Unity, but if you notice you're having any strange issues, just go ahead and give Unity a restart and just see if that fixes the problem. So in our characters, let's go ahead and drag in the Koharu prefab, and you'll notice that nothing shows up. And the reason for that is, let's go ahead and hit play, actually. The components here need to initialize the character. So now we still don't see anything, but let's go ahead and try scaling this up. About 345, and now we're starting to see little bits and pieces of that character. Not exactly looking great at the moment, but this is at least showing up. So you have to get it to initialize and then scale it up. You can go ahead and exit play mode and then just go ahead and scale the character. Once it's initialized, it's got the graphics, and now you can actually see it as you're working with it in the editor. But we need to fix a couple things, because you'll notice the rendering is all out of whack here. So let's open up the render controller component and look under sorting. It's already in back to front Z, which is the sorting mode, and that's fine. But if we want to get it to actually show up properly, we'll need to change this order a little bit. And we're also going to want to change how it actually renders on screen. So first of all, you'll notice, maybe I'll just drag her down a little bit, she's actually over top of the dialog bar. Even though she's on a panel that is beneath the dialog layer over here, she's still showing up in front of it because of the way that the depth sorting on Live2D characters works. Just because we have it on a particular spot in the UI does not mean it's going to show beneath the things that it should be beneath based off of the hierarchy. And actually, this is because of the sorting depth for all these other layers. Now, what we could do is we could go through and say, maybe on dialog, let's go ahead and add a canvas component, and then just override sorting, and then we can increase the order in layer, and that'll bring it right above our character. But we're not going to do that because there are a couple other reasons for this. We're going to want to actually isolate these characters into their own layer, into their own canvas, and then render that on our screen, because trying to stack these characters, at least if you're doing it like me where I have different kinds of characters here. If you're just working with Live2D, you can make it work. Just handle the sorting orders and change how the characters prioritize themselves just by changing like the depth. But for these flat characters, I'm not going to be able to control that individually, because if I change her order in the layer, I'm going to have to be very, very particular about it, and you'll see that some parts sort behind Stella while other parts are sorting in front. So it's just a big hassle trying to get them to sort behind the things that I want. So the way that we'll render these guys is through another camera and another canvas setup. So I'm going to make a new object under V in controllers, create an empty, and call this the render groups. And the render groups is going to have the different groups for our different characters. So the first one is going to be main, and I'll take the main camera and I will pop that. Actually, that needs to be in the V in controller, not the root. So I'll take the main camera, pop it in main, and also take root and pop that in there. And then I'm also going to make a render group for Live2D. So Live2D, there we go. And that's going to have its own camera as well. So camera, Live2D, and also a canvas. UI, canvas, and canvas, Live2D. So these will be specifically and only for rendering Live2D characters. So in order for us to do that and isolate what renders on these different cameras, we'll just need to change the culling mask that's assigned to them. And the culling mask is based off of whatever layers you have established inside of your Unity project. You'll see we have default, transparent, UI, all these things, which are actually the layers up here. And you can create as many as you want, up to 31. So technically, I guess that's not as many as you want, but you get the point. You can make however many you need for your project. So we'll set a separate layer. We'll actually go ahead and create one for UI Live2D, and this will be the layer that our Live2D characters are on, and this will be the layer that our camera renders. So under camera, let's first of all change the culling mask from everything to only use Live2D. And then the canvas, we'll go ahead and change that layer to Live2D. And as for our main camera, let's go ahead and change that culling mask from everything to remove Live2D. That way, we're not trying to project this onto two different cameras, or two different canvases, rather. And then I'm going to go ahead and create a new panel inside of the Live2D object. And I'll just call this characters. And inside of characters, I'm going to drag Koharu right straight in there. Okay, so you'll notice we got these two that are rendering, and this second canvas is now extremely huge because they're rendering in two separate modes. We set main to render on a certain camera, and that's how we should do our different renderers for these different character types as well. Again, this is because I'm using 3 different character types. You might still want to do this if you're using Live2D, just so that way you have just absolute perfect control over the depth sorting of your characters, and you don't have to ever worry about them clipping through other objects on the scene, because we're going to project that onto our main canvas instead of having the potential for Live2D characters to clip behind or in front other objects. And we'll do the same thing for our 3D characters. But let's go ahead and change this from overlay to screen space camera and select the camera Live2D. So now it's only rendering on that camera. And if we come into the main, then we're only seeing that camera. We're not seeing the main camera at all. So we need to change how this is set up. So I said we're going to be rendering this onto our main canvas. And For those of you who know a little bit about Unity, you already know what I'm talking about. That's going to be a render texture. So what we can do is come into our graphics, and under UI, let's go ahead and make a new folder called render textures, because we're going to have at least 2 of these. And let's come and create, and then find render texture wherever that is, custom render texture right here. And I'm going to call this the Live2D Characters panel. And I'll set this to my default resolution, which is 1920 by 1080. Now, this number, 1920 by 1080, should be fine. You can also scale that up if you anticipate a higher resolution, or if you want to avoid any potential resolution issues. I haven't encountered any, even when scaling to 4K. But then you can just avoid render textures and just have all your Live2D characters on the main panel, and then just add a canvas component to each one of the panels, offset the sorting depth on them by like maybe 200 or something each. That way you give plenty of room for your Live2D characters to sort one on top of the next. You just need to find those sweet numbers through trial and error and see what would work best. But I've been testing this, and this is fine, so I'm going to run 1920 by 1080, and that's my Live2D render texture. So inside of characters, now instead of adding the Live2D character, I'll go ahead and add a raw image and call this Live2D Characters. Which means, yes, all of the Live2D characters are going to be on the same sorting depth in this character layer, only as compared to the sprite characters. So sprite characters will always be either in front or behind of Live2D characters. They won't sort in front or behind each other individually, just because they're 2 completely separate types. In a visual novel, you're really not going to have these mixed types like this. But I want to show how we can incorporate all of these into a project. This is not so much showing how we can incorporate Live2D characters with sprite characters and with 3D models. I anticipate everyone will use one type or the other, but for the purpose of this project, since I'm doing all 3, this is the way that I'm laying it out. So this is not some set standard that I say, hey, do it this way. This is because I'm doing 3 different types for the audience here. So with that in mind, there are going to be some limitations here, which really is the sorting depth and not being able to sort Live2D characters and sprites and 3D models ahead and behind each other based on individual priorities. But as a group, it's going to work flawlessly. Okay, so I'm just going to position them here, and I will change the raw texture to be that texture that we made. And then the camera, let's go ahead and come down to output texture and set that to the render texture as well. And now we have the main feed of our camera back. So if we look at the Live2D characters here, we've got nothing. That's just sorting behind Stella. It's actually right here. So I can go ahead and scale this up just like that. And now I'm going to change the color of our render texture, or not the render texture, but the camera. We want to come back to the background type and change it to a solid color. Now we've still got this panel look here because my character panel has an image on it, so I'll remove that, and now everything looks fine. Now, one thing I'm going to do is come into scene view here, and let me see the canvas. I think characters is scaled up all the way. Yeah, so it is. I'm going to center Koharu back to the center here. And let's play and see what this is looking like right now. Okay, so my Live2D, let me go ahead and hide Raylene and Stella there. So Koharu is extremely tiny. Of course, I need to scale her up. And, okay, so she's showing up. So she's rendering onto our main canvas through that render texture. But even when I disable that, she's still there, because if we look at Koharu, she's on the default layer. Let's change her to Live2D. Yes, change children. And then there, now she's rendering. So you just want to make sure that whenever you import these characters, you set their layer to Live2D. And you also want to make sure that you apply whatever scale looks best on them, which may be 750. Oh, that's a little too big. So 650. Just like that. And I will move her down a little bit. We'll fix that sorting in a second. Okay, so now she's showing up. She's rendering through the secondary canvas. So if we just go ahead, disable that, and disable that image. Yeah, so she's being controlled on that single object through this render group for Live2D characters. So the reason that she's showing up like this is, of course, the sorting on that character. So if we open that up, we've got her set to 1 here, but we need to change this mode, I suppose, to back to front order, which is going to go off of her actual sprites here inside of the parts and everything. So it'll render the back first and go through each one of these and just render them on top of each other that way. I'm going to go ahead and set her Z scale to 1 as well. And now let's look at sorting these characters in front of each other. So if we have a second Koharu, and I'll just move her over here, you see they're clipping in front of each other. That's because of this order and layer that we're working with. So, and this is what's pesky about Live2D sometimes. And I am not the most experienced with these characters, but I know how to get them to work. There may be other people on YouTube who work with this system far more than I do, and they have far more expertise and good information for how you can handle these. But really, you'll be changing the order and layer here to sort them on top of each other. And you can't just change this to 2 because you've got a lot of sprites for this character. We need to change it to a higher number, which 20 is not even high enough. So maybe 30. 30 is not high enough. 50. You can see how this is a little bit of a hassle sometimes. So you find a nice number for each of the characters, like 250, and so you would increment each of them by 250. So then she would be 500, and so on and so forth, and we can get them layering on top of each other. And this is exactly why we have them separated into a different canvas, because if we started messing with this order and layer and going by high intervals, then they are very easily going to clip in front of the other layers. But by having them on a render texture, we can mess with this all day long, and they're still going to render in the same spot as far as depth goes on our main canvas. Okay, so I'm going to delete her. Let's just work with this character that we got. I'm going to go ahead and pull in the other characters as well. So I've got 3 other ones here that I can use. So I'm going to pull in Mao, I guess is how you say that. And then Natori. And then Rice. I worked with a guy named Rice once. And it wasn't a nickname either. Okay, now we're going to have to do the same thing for these 3 characters that we did for Koharu, because they are not initialized at the moment. So let me go ahead and hide Raylene and Stella, and then we play to get those components to initialize the Live2D characters. Now they're initialized, let's go ahead and scale them up, maybe 500 by 500, and they're still not showing up because we have to change the layer. Make sure we got the right order here. There we go, and now they're showing up. So with all of them shown up, let's go ahead and go to the render controller. But as you can see, multi-object editing is not supported, so we have to do them individually. So change sorting to back to front order on each of them. Unfortunately, that doesn't stay open, so you have to open it every time you select the character. That's kind of annoying, but just the way it is. And let's scale them up just a little bit more. 750 by 750, something like that. I'm gonna move them down. Okay, there we go. So I've got them scaled up, and since I'm in play mode, I'm just gonna highlight them all, copy them, exit play mode, go ahead and delete them, and then paste them inside of characters. Okay, so now I've got all 4 of the Live2D characters. Now, if we bring them all together, let's go ahead and just pull them into where they kind of overlap with each other. You'll notice right off the bat they are clipping through each other because we got to find that sweet spot value for their sorting. So I'm going to start with I'm going to start with 250 on these guys and just see. So order and layer, we'll go with Mao. She'll be 250. So we can see she automatically comes up front. Natori, who is that? Okay, so 500. And then let's change sorting of the girl with the book, Rice, to 750. And now Koharu. All right, so let's go ahead and see how these increments work. So let's go 250. Actually, no, that would need to be 500 to get in front of Mao. 500. So yeah, she comes in front of Mao. Then let's try 750, and she does indeed get in front of that guy. And then 1000, and she's in front of everyone else. So yeah, we can use those increments for them. And we could take this as high as we need it to go. I guess it looks like there's a cap of about 10,000. Maybe that is 9,000. Yeah, so about a cap of 9,000 it seems like before things start to get odd. So some technicalities in there. It's not perfect, but it does work, and it does get our characters rendering. I don't anticipate we will reach the 1,000 mark. In order for us to do that, we would need to have 36 characters on the screen at one time in order for us to hit that value. And I don't see us getting 36 characters on screen at any point during any visual novel. At most, you might have like 10, and that would be really stretching the screen space. So that's gonna be it for our characters. We just need to get them in their prefabs now. So I'll go ahead and duplicate the generic character and drag that in here because our prefab is going to be pretty much similar. We still want the root and we still want the animator, but then let's remove the renderers. Right click, prefab, unpack completely, that we were working on a new object. And this is going to be for Koharu. We're going to start with her. So Koharu, I will drag her into the renderers. And let me just exit out and see what this looks like. Okay, I'm going to remove the layer. And I actually don't... no, I'll leave her in renderers. No, I won't either. I'll take her out of renderers and just have her underneath of anim. And then let me go ahead and just scale her around where she needs to be, which would be about here. And then move her back in anim, and there we go. Now let's make another one for the other characters. So remove Koharu. I'll go ahead and hide her. And let's make this for Mao. Okay, so for Mao, we've got to make sure we include her little staff there. Get up above her hat. There we go. And there we go. That's Mao. Next one we're going to do is for Natori. This guy looks like the Quincy from Bleach. Whatever his name was. It's been so long since I've seen that show. Okay, so there is Natori's object. And one more for Rice. Okay, and with that, we can go ahead and create their character folders. So let's come into resources where everything's located. And inside of characters, let's go ahead and make a couple more folders. So we'll create one for Rice and another one for Natori, another folder for Koharu, and another folder for Mao. So now these guys, let me go ahead and drag in Rice into the Rice folder, Natori into his folder, Koharu into hers, and then Mao into hers. Okay, and now we've got our Live2D character prefabs. But before I forget, let's go ahead and make sure in Live2D we come to our camera and disable or remove the audio listener. because Unity does not like us having more than one in the scene at a time. Okay, so that's the basics on how we import Live2D and get the characters available to start working with them in our system. So in the next episode, we're going to get our characters to spawn on screen and start using some of their animations and expressions to give them the life that makes Live2D characters what they are.